Nazis, the Alamo,
hippies and David Bowie. Enough said there.
You know, tonight marks the time when you guys are no longer legally fettered by the dependency of youth. Congratulations. You'll be fettered in the future by the responsibility of adulthood.
Enjoy it. All of the seniors I teach are people. With the possible exception of Overholt, or as he's known in some circles, Overholt. The verdict's still out on him largely because he didn't agree with me that Aquaman was an effeminate Poseidon. Regardless, this class has provided me with many other fond memories, and because they possess a certain je ne sais quoi, I have elected to simply sing a few of, that's right, the memories. Now these are just a sampling, rough sampling. Now let me just take a moment here to warm up. Well, earlier it sounded better. My dogs were howling, and that's usually a good sign. I think it sounded a little pitchy, so I'm going to move on and just actually list these memories instead of sing them. But, you know, one of the things that stood out, and some of the teachers know this too, Maloney has an obsession with the word fiduciary. Now, it's not healthy. It's not healthy at all. And he and Stump have this really even more abnormal desire to play yield ball toss at very inopportune times. And unfortunately, that's gonna... he kept the ball at school, so that might be handed down to the future, which is not good. But they would do that to the Alphaville classic, Forever Young, also known as his jam. Other things that occurred, Pabinator, oh, the Pabinator. Yeah. She believed that because I'm an epileptic, I have clear blood. She wasn't alone, and I think that's a little bit more disheartening. There was also the day when Dodd was very downtrodden and stricken with really sadness over some suicide bomber, I think, breaking your shower one day. And it was she couldn't get anything accomplished for that entire day. It was devastating. There were also the times where we collectively got to reminisce in the ways, or in the things rather, that I learned as I was walking the streets on Tuesday nights. In an effort to learn your youth speak, that's what I have to do. There were the fun times during fourth period. There was Communist Day, my 5th favorite holiday, where we ate bread. There was the succubus. There was the mini fireside chats with Gil. That was fun. There were, I don't know, Javante ate bacon in my class one day. I'm not quite sure. I don't know. Never figured that one out. And there was also the Midas Touch incident in 2014, which very few know about, but something that had to be said nonetheless. Those are some of the memories, some, well, okay, maybe all of them. No. Well, it depends on the day. But those are some of the memories I'll forever remember, unless, because I am a card-carrying member of the CEA, that is the Current Epileptics of America, I have another seizure, in which case I'll forget everything, and all of you will be dead to me. Experience does dictate this. As I was thinking about what to talk about tonight, the first thing that came to mind was the apocalypse. And to be fair, a lot of us still think that's pretty close. But my dogs, who act as my advisors on pretty much all things, as you guys know, thought that would be an appropriate topic for tonight. So, alas, the annihilation of the Earth isn't on tonight's docket. The fundamental conflict, though, in life is between your desire or will and truth. Now, the bitterness of truth is its total indifference to human will and desire, coupled with the fact that human desire or will tries to reshape reality and therefore truth to suit itself. People try to make truth accommodate belief, and you know that's simply not the case. Belief must accommodate truth. Merely believing something to be true doesn't make it so. A million Frenchmen can be wrong, and I don't say that simply because I'm a German. Okay, it happens. Now, this effect of belief superseding truth is an effect of anti-intellectualism, which is the foundation for the secular worldview, and which is rampant across the university, as you'll see soon. And if you follow it to its systemic and logical conclusion, what you discover is the complete eradication of God in all paradigms. It not only seeks to cease thought itself, but it also seeks to assimilate you into its worldview in order to prevent you from sharing your perspective. It often comes under the false nomenclature of being liberal or being politically correct, but very few things are actually liberal when relativism holds sway. And yet nature abhors a vacuum. So, the void left by the suppression of truth is filled with the belief in not only nothing, but as Chesterton would say, something much worse, the belief in anything. The English journalist Steve Turner correctly captured the impact and manifestation of this worldview in society when he said the following: the secular worldview believes that there is no absolute truth except the truth that there is no absolute truth. It believes in the rejection of creeds and the flowering of thought. Now this next point is very poignant, so pay attention to it. If chance be the father of all flesh, then disaster is his rainbow in the sky. And when you hear state of emergency, sniper kills 10, or a bomb destroys a school, it is but the sound of man worshiping his maker. G.K. Chesterton also said, before you remove any fence, be sure to pause long enough to see why it was put up in the first place. And unfortunately, history is a testament to people who have destroyed, or who have been destroyed, or who have been felled hither and yon because they removed the fences of God. They violated something that was never meant to be violated. Now, because the world's philosophy, guiding philosophy, or in the more religious words of Star Trek, their prime directive, is so flawed, it's vital that you understand what you're commencing to do. Now, given the audience tonight, I assume most of you are familiar with the term prime directive, but for those of you not familiar with it, that's okay. It simply means you don't watch Star Trek and you're a pagan. As a brief side note, I would like to say that the glory of Star Trek is manifold, and I'll be discussing it later at a local cafe if you would like to drop in and listen, because I get out of my house often enough to go to a cafe. The world's prime directive is not unlike the Borgs, though, since we're sticking with the Star Trek theme. To them, to the world, autonomy of thought is dead, truth is found in the collective mind, and resistance to it is futile, or so they believe. In Matthew 4, Christ's temptations in the wilderness are described, and each of the three, reveals the nature of the attacks you're going to face from the Borg, from the world, namely, attacks against the intellect, the will, and the imagination. Now, to withstand these attacks is found in what you were created to do. It is what you are now at this commencement ceremony actually commencing, and that is two things. You're commencing to do something and to become something, the fulfillment of which, if you fulfill both of those, is a life of pure worship. Now, what you're commencing to do, you've heard it all year, can't go one more day without it, is to choose shalom. You're familiar with the concept in general. I would like to frame it, though, in a slightly different way. Shalom is the actualization of the kingdom of God. And so, by choosing shalom, you're living in a way that inherently glorifies Him and testifies of Him. Now, in order to actualize God's kingdom, you have to build it with the many different unique gifts that you each possess. You possess them, obviously, because they're given to you by God Himself. But in order to leverage those gifts you're going to need to cultivate them. Cultivation is an ongoing process. It does not end this side of heaven. And in order to build up the kingdom of God, you have to cultivate all the powers of the human spirit. You must practice what Philip Melanchthon referred to as Beredsamkeit. That's a glorious German word, as all things German typically are glorious. Melanchthon, though, for those of you not familiar, is a historical figure. He was Martin Luther's right-hand man during the Reformation and was considered the greatest theologian, among other things, of his day by Luther himself. Not saying quite a lot, considering how Luther thought of his own self. But Beredsamkeit literally is translated as eloquence. But the way in which Melanchthon's using it, and the way in which I would like to use it tonight, is to simply mean a whole body eloquence through the cultivation of everything that you possess. So in order to build up the kingdom of God, you need to cultivate your physical and mental gifts, as well as your very essence, specifically your soul. Now, a person who does not take the time to do this is inordinately individualistic, infantile, and narcissistic. They are passive, sensate, busy, and hurried. They seek entertainment over the cultivation of their mind and soul, and are therefore impotent or unable to stand against the powerful forces of secularism that threaten to bury Christian ideas under a veneer of soulless pluralism and misguided scientism. Now, in short, they succumb to the attacks of the Lord. The intellect, the will, the imagination, all those things succumb to the attacks that the Lord presents them, or the world, since the Lord is the world, don't it? And they thus fail in their prime directive. Now, perhaps some of you will be called to teach or preach, or maybe, as Adriano recently revealed to me his passion for, you might become a stay-at-home parent. Perfectly fine. Others of you may be called to make laws or beautiful music. But regardless of your calling, if you take time to cultivate your skills and your soul, and in the process yield everything to Christ, I guarantee you there will be something about your teaching, preaching, legislating, housewifery, or husbandry for Adriano, or composing that transcends and glorifies those respective careers because it speaks undeniably of God. Remember, however, that your commencing is twofold. The Lord cares more about the kind of person you will become than about the things you will do. And now, fortunately for all of us, the lover of all souls is not content to leave us as we are. His desire is to not only flush away all of the sin, but to pour himself into us, so that we become more like him and reflect his majesty in a brilliance too unbearable for even angelic eyes to behold. If you commence those two things, your life will become one of pure worship. Archbishop William Temple, defined worship in the following way, and I find it to be very, very helpful. He says, worship is a submission of all our nature to God. It is the quickening of the conscience by his holiness, the nourishment of the mind with his truth, the purifying of the imagination by his beauty, the opening of the heart to his love, and the surrender of the will to his purpose. And all of this gathered up in adoration, the most selfless emotion of which our nature is capable, and therefore the chief remedy for that self-centeredness, which is original sin and the source of actual sin. You see, the beauty of worship is that it protects you from the three aforementioned attacks: the attacks against the intellect, the will, and the imagination. In addition, it's the manifestation of Beredsamkeit, the cultivation of everything you possess. It is also, in turn, the fulfillment of your prime directive. It is all these things because it is only in worship that all the inclinations of your heart come together to find an expression of the sacred God himself. If you want to live a life of perpetual novelty, then you must follow your prime directive. The gospel is never heard in isolation. It is always heard against the background of the cultural environment in which you live. And so you must practice Beredsamkeit. You must cultivate all that you have been given and all that you are with the intended purpose of building up the kingdom of God as an image bearer of his majesty. That is true worship. That is what you were made to do. Life is a long defeat. It is a defeat of self. It is difficult, and the challenges you will face may seem daunting, but take solace in the fact that God's light is able to penetrate and obliterate the double darkness of sin and ignorance in which the world dwells. For at such a time as this you have been called to live by the Creator of all things, the true source of light and wisdom. It is by divine appointment that you are here, and you must set your hand to the plow and dare not look back. I promise that if you do, you will reveal to the world the truth it has suppressed and yet longs for, the truth of God's love. What you have to offer the world is a love unrestrained by ambition, timetables, and pride, a love that is freely given and more than any of us can imagine because it is nothing that any of us deserve. I love all of you, and I wish you the best. God bless you.